Today's book exposes the hidden forces that control our lives, compelling us to confront our deepest convictions through a life-changing form of self-exploration. Drawing on decades of research in belief and behavior change, our guest reveals how unconscious self-hypnosis traps us in a cycle of overthinking and dissatisfaction. His groundbreaking insights expose delusions of want that leave us anxious and lost, obscuring our true selves and leading to spiritless lives of doubt and regret. For those of you who are long-term listeners of the Innovation Show, we do cover corporate innovation, corporate entrepreneurship, but at the heart of all that is freedom, some type of freedom from the matrix of reality, getting to happiness in life. And today's book really, really helps with that. I've been a long-time fan of his work and have many of his books on Kindle. And when I saw this one, I was like, I got to make space for Tom, get him on the show. It's a great pleasure to welcome the author of Unwinding Want, Tom Asacker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to have you, man. And I just want to show people the book there. You have no excuse. This is a beautiful poem, essentially. It's called a koan, a Zen koan, and I'll let Tom explain what that is. But Tom, I thought I'd tee you up, man, with this beautiful quote that you start the book with, a James Baldwin quote that I just absolutely loved. And it's like a lens through which you can read the book. The role of the artist is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to make you conscious of the things you do not see. James Baldwin. And I love that as a gentle and friendly provocation through which to see this book. Maybe we'll use that as a way to describe what it's all about.
Yeah, I love that quote as well. And I think the most important part of what Baldwin was saying about love is that love is the desire for everything around you to flourish, to grow, to flourish, to be whatever it is that's inside of that particular life form, that life force. And if you can't see what you can't see, you can't get that out of your way in order to flourish, to grow into whatever it is that's inside of you wants to grow into. So you're not, and this book is challenging in that there are a lot of things in here, especially right up front, talking about how I define want, which I'm sure you'll get to, which really causes a lot of pause in people when they read that, and they want to reject it flat out. And what I'm trying to say with the Baldwin quote is, no, I'm trying to get something out of your way. I'm trying to get you to see something that maybe you can't see. So that's what that quote's all about.
I love it. The idea of change what you see and what you see changes comes to mind as well. One of the things I do with each show is I have many articles in draft, and something somebody will say in a book or something will say on the show will push me to finish that article. And I have this one about the whole idea of what we experience in life is actually not a reflection, but actually a projection of what's going on inside our mind. And it came to mind when I read this beautiful quote by you: the external world is an echo of your internal world. And I thought, again, very profound, very important to understand before we get into understanding wonder and want.
From a brain science standpoint, it's a difficult concept to get across, but to keep it simple, what we're seeing in the world is what are conditioning our perceptions to allow in. An example that I give people is that if you're a house painter, for example, and somebody said, come give me a quote on my house, you're going to look at all of those windows and it's going to look bad to you, right? Because you know, doing all that trim, it's so you get a negative feeling about all of that. And there may be bushes out in the front that you have to get behind and do the painting. If you're a thief and you look at that house, right, that looks good. You have a good feeling about this house because you see bushes you can hide behind. You see all kinds of windows you can go in and out of to make a quick escape. So we're looking at life through a particular lens that we're not even aware of. It becomes an echo of our inner world. And it's something that really needs to be looked at from an internal standpoint all the time, because you'll get certain feelings, and these bodily feelings, you're not really sure where they're coming from, but your mind gets turned on by those feelings, and it starts making assumptions about where these feelings are coming from. And usually it's looking out into the world, looking for patterns. Oh, we know why you're feeling this way. It's because of this, and it's because these people think this, and nobody's calling you back because they don't connect with your ideas. Whatever it happens to be, none of it's true. None of it's true. You have no idea what's going on in other people's worlds, their inner worlds, their minds, their lives. So it's just really important, because it can cause, you can spiral. It's what creates when people say they're stuck. It's what creates being stuck. It's all mental. It's not about reality.
We'll come more to that in a while, because one of the things that really struck me reading this book was how so many of us create those stories in our head that prevent us from doing what we truly want to do, or what we feel we want to do. And then we come up with these assumptions or these excuses with the language to tell ourselves, oh no, that'll never work, or it's too much work, or we look for all the blockers of why we can't do it. And then we get stuck in that hamster wheel that we talked about before we came on air. I'd love you to talk about that, because that, for me, is one of the goals of this show, is to help people realize that there's another alternative. And what that alternative starts with is actually feeling what you want, and then not listening to the excuses. And yes, some of us are stuck with mortgages or whatever. We have families to protect and to provide for, and it's difficult, but there is a way around it if we work at it over time.
In one of my previous books, I wrote just a short little line that said, if you have an idea, no matter what the idea is, don't Google it, right? Because what Googling anything is going to do is it's going to show you it's being done, it's been done, it didn't work. There's just so many ideas, 8 billion people on the planet, right? Everyone's doing everything. So that information is doing nothing but preventing whatever's in you that wants out to come out, right? It's like, well, I want to sing. Oh, there are millions of singers. Or, I want to act. Oh, look at all the actors in Hollywood. None of them ever get jobs. They work in restaurants. Well, look, this is true about everything now. Maybe in the old days it wasn't, right? But now it's available. There's no barriers to writing books, to being an actor, to being you pick whatever you want. It's wide open. So it's important to realize that what makes you different is not your strategy. It's you. It's how you make it happen uniquely in the marketplace of ideas and art or whatever it is. That's what makes it work, is you.
I love that, man. For anybody who is a father and their wives, like mine, used to Google when the baby had some type of symptom, the worst thing they could do is go to Google. So it's the exact same thing.
Absolutely.
I mentioned earlier on the idea of wonder and want. And one of the things about the book is you put under a microscope many words and the power of language, and how language was a later development or a later technology really in human life cycle. But the word wonder, you tell us, is such a powerful word. It means to be astonished, to magnify. Wonder is the window to being truly alive. And you tell us you want us to fling open that window and be astonished by that single word. I thought I'd pick a few of the words that you focus on, because some of them, like wonder and want, are very important in the book.
Yeah, wonder. Look, every great idea, from religious ideas all the way up to marketplace ideas, all came because somebody wondered. about something. Typically something that didn't feel right. This doesn't feel right about the world, right? There was an inventor, David Levy, and he said, somebody asked him once, because he invented so many things. People said, you're so proficient in inventing. He said, how do you do this? He said, I used a curse effect. And they said, what the hell's a curse effect? And he said, anytime I hear someone curse, that's a sign for me to invent something. So that was his way of turning on his wonder. Like, why would somebody be cursing about this? And then he would wonder about what can be done to make this better. We should be living right now in a world of wonder, right? Because there's a lot of people cursing today. There's a lot of things we can be doing right now, and we have the resources to do it. We have the mental capacity to do it today.
It reminds me of, I bring my son to school every morning in the car and in rush hour traffic, and that can be difficult. And that idea of the curse and the curse triggering something, I looked for that in myself. I looked at places where I was frustrated or where the feeling was giving me some type of wrong notion in my head, like rush hour traffic's terrible. I'm in the commute every morning now. When I get stuck, when you have somebody who's slow in front of the lights and they make you miss the light, when you get stuck in the red light. So now I've reinterpreted that as a chance to do breathing. So I do breathing with my son every time that happens, and he knows why I'm doing it as well. But it was that whole idea, rewiring the negative into a positive. And again, the book does this. And one of the things you say here is that our minds don't like the interpretation that you suggest of want. Our minds want us to grab the phone, look it up, and then debate it. The mind is pathological that way. And I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about this, because want, an unwinding want, is at the source of the book. And you tell us here, and this hugely resonated for me, because it really is what the driver for me behind the show is, to let curiosity be your compass, not want.
Okay. So this is where it gets a little bit, this is where some people are going to say, no, I don't agree with that. And hopefully we'll get to have them understand before we end. So I define want as anything that you are doing or allowing to continue in your life, including your thoughts, believe it or not. You want it. That's want. Because if you didn't want it, you wouldn't continue to do it. And that pushback I immediately get is, that's not true. I don't want it. I don't want this job. I have to go to this job, right? I don't want this relationship. I have to continue with this relationship. I don't want to go to the gym. I have to go to the gym to work out. It's just not true. I grew up in a place called Brockton, Massachusetts, and it was the home of guys like Rocky Marciano and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I went to high school with Hagler. I worked out with a lot of these people, and they would show up at the gym 4 or 5 in the morning. They would eat bowls of rice in the morning, and I would ask them why they were doing it. Like, who wants to be eating rice at 5 in the morning? And they would just look at me like, why are you asking stupid questions? I want to do this. This is part of what I do to become a champion, right? So when you look at these people, they recognize that the things they want, they're doing, whether or not they like them or not, they want them. And that's what makes them great. And I believe that if people can wrap their head around everything in life they're doing or allowing to continue they want, that will give them the internal power to then look at it and say, yeah, this is on me. I have choices I can make. What are the choices I want to make? That doesn't mean that you immediately stop doing what you're doing. That just means that maybe you look at it through the lens you looked at sitting in traffic through, which is, hey, this isn't really bad. This job that I have that helps me feed my family and send my kids to school. And why am I looking at it that way? And the reason you're looking at it that way is you're saying, I have to. The more you say I have to, the more it makes it feel like you have no choice. And when you have no choice, people hate that. There's nothing worse than having no choice in life. Well, there's maybe one thing worse, and that's having no friendships, and no love.
I think that have to and changing that self-talk is such an important thing. And it dawned on me a few years ago. You do keynotes around the world. I do as well. And I remember a couple of times catching myself saying, oh, I have to go to Canada, or I have to go to the States, or from Ireland here. And then I was like going, I don't have to. Like, and on top of that, what a privilege to. Like, I am so privileged to. There's people so less privileged in the world, and we just rewire our language. And it's one of the things that I like about the book. And you asked this major question that everybody should ask themselves, and certainly I did, and I let it marinate for a little while. And I'd love you to just expand on it a little bit and drive this message home. Do your thoughts and emotions happen to you, or are you allowing and enabling them?
There's different levels of this. I've spoken to people that said, what do you mean, my thoughts? There are actually people that don't hear the thoughts in their head. They're just moving with them on autopilot. It's almost like, what are you talking about? I don't hear these thoughts. Then you get to a level where you start hearing these thoughts and you start wondering about these thoughts. And many people believe that they are not in charge of these thoughts. That has nothing to do with them. They'll even say things like, oh no, and I think they're grabbing this from some Buddhist traditions. They'll say things like, oh, your thoughts are just like passing clouds. And in particular, that kind of metaphor, I really dislike that. Because what you're saying to yourself is, there is nothing that I can do about the weather in my mind, right? It's just going to happen. And I just need to let it happen and just relax through it. And then it'll change just like the weather changes. That's not true, because you can do things that will condition how your mind now starts reacting to things. It's nothing more than, call it exposure therapy for the thinking mind. You're afraid of snakes? You might as well just say, it's just like the weather. I'm going to be afraid of snakes. It's going to come and go for the rest of my life. That's not true. There's ways to get that fear to diminish or go away completely. And it's the same thing with the thoughts in your mind. When you understand where these thoughts are coming from, and you give your thinking mind a rationale that's as sound as what it's using for its logic, it will shut up. It will come along, because all it's trying to do is to protect you. All right. All it wants you to do is stay safe. Stay in the cage. You're perfectly safe in here. You'll get fed. Everything's fine. And as soon as you start taking a step out, here it comes. Why you shouldn't do it. All of that. And I think that's the reason why they say that when people get into like their 80s, 90s, they don't really care about what anybody thinks about them or what they're doing, right? Because what they have basically said to their thinking mind is, hey, look, I don't have a lot of time left anyway. So nothing that you say to me is going to have any effect on what I've got left. And so the thinking mind, seeing that there's no effect on the information it's giving back, stops. It says, okay, this is useless. This person is not listening. So you can train your thinking mind. Why do you look at entrepreneurs and you say, how can these people do this over and over and over? How can they keep failing? Well, because they've taught their thinking mind, this isn't the end of the world if I fail. So now the thinking mind leaves them alone and lets them do something again. It says, oh, I guess you won't die.
It's such an important thing. And one of the reasons I really wanted to interrupt our usual broadcast to bring this book to everybody is that when you realize actually nobody cares, they shouldn't care. If they care, they've got nothing going on in their own lives. And I was talking to a couple of colleagues recently, I'm running this big event over here, Tom, the Reinvention Summit. And one of the guys, Scott Wolfson, he said to me, he said, it sounds like it's kind of like a sand mandala. And I didn't know what a sand mandala was, but a sand mandala is this beautiful, what Tibetan monks do is they create this beautiful design, a mandala out of sand. And it takes them hours upon hours to create this beautiful thing. And then at the end, they just wipe it off. And I was thinking about that. I was like going, a creation is kind of like that. But I was like going, so is life, if you really think about it. And I think that's what older people realize eventually is actually there's nobody keeping score. There's nobody keeping receipts on what you're doing. And if you actually just let it go and just realize it's about you building your own mandala, whatever that is. And when you let go of the feeling of what will they think, like who the heck are they anyway?
Exactly. Not only that, if you don't take all of this seriously, if you realize that like the mandala, whatever, it's going to get swept away. All of it gets swept away. There actually was a story about, I don't remember where it was, but the monks were making one. And it was beautiful. It's taking days and all that. And I think they moved away from it or something to rest a little bit. And some little kid, like a toddler, got up on stage and started dancing on it and messed the whole thing up. And I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. But everybody there got mad. All the people watching, they were all angry. And I said, they have missed the point completely if they're angry about that.
Brilliant. I hope the monks did again.
I think they did. And that's why seeing through all of these illusions is a difficult thing. You can be in an illusion as a monk, right?
I have to say, I do that myself. You think sometimes you even getting stuck in, oh, I got to figure it out, or I got something figured out. And that's ego as well. Like, even the thought of that, or, sometimes even your gratitude, your journaling or whatever it is, sometimes you got to really question, is that really true what I'm saying here? So I keep digging and excavating to get to the truth of the matter. But I loved what you said. There's a quote that I kind of use as a guiding quote to think about that idea of the mandala. It's Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, but he said that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And
right.
It came to mind when I read this line by you. You said, you are a feeling being who can use your amazing thinking mind. And the truth of the matter is you are not a thinking machine who has feelings. And I thought that really was important to call out.
I think that if you sat with most people and asked them what they feel they are, they will tell you that they feel that they are, in so many words, a thinking machine that's doing things and solving problems, and that every so often they get to experience feelings, right? Through the love of others, through watching movies, through reading fiction. And it's so backwards because you're a feeling being. You should be walking around feeling all the time. And the time you should use your thinking mind is only when you need it. It should not be turned on, moving you around through the world. But that's what we've done because we believe, and this is a strange one too. This is you've got to think this one through and then let it go once you see it. We think that we're trying to get feelings. That this is the purpose of what we do, to get these feelings. And what we don't realize is that, no, we're feeling beings anyway. We should just be letting them out all the time. I think I used the example of the horse. I said the horse doesn't run to get a particular feeling. It runs because it feels like running. And we need to be doing more of that as human beings. We need to have what we feel come out of us. And we don't do that. And I can tell you for a fact that we don't do that in our work because we believe that we have to do certain things particular ways And we've never questioned that. We don't wonder, is this true? We just keep doing it over and over and over again.
And it takes work. I mean, you mentioned those athletes, for example, in the bowl race, that it does take discipline, and it takes falling off the horse and learning from this over and over. There's no end goal. You've never made it with this excavating yourself and unwinding want. And one of the key things that you talked about is understanding and unwinding delusion, because we are masters of self-delusion. This is the next chapter and a really important thing to look at. We won't get through all the book, and I don't want to, because I do want people to read it. And it's not a book that you can even cover in an hour show. It's a book that you read slowly, take pause, realize where I'm feeling. Like, just on the feeling thing, before we go to self-delusion, one of the ways I realized and was able to beat habits, and I don't mean like bad habits, but like wanting something sweet, or I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Tom. You're walking, say somewhere in Massachusetts, you're walking along and you get this feeling, oh, I really want a type of coffee or an ice cream or something like that. And I always kind of go, it's almost like this geography, this area is triggering a feeling in me to trigger a want. And when I spot the pattern, I go, I can break the pattern. And it's a way to get to that freedom of to unwind want, is to go, why are the feelings being triggered? What's the history of them? Or is it some good feeling that they gave me? Is it a dopamine hit that they gave me over the years?
Yeah, that is exactly how the marketplace works. Right? Is that they're looking for people that want a feeling, that believe they can get the feeling from someplace in the marketplace. And so they tie all of the information that they're giving people to a feeling. I mean, you've been in the advertising world, so you know that you're not telling people how many cylinders are in the car. You're showing them what they're going to feel like with the top down, riding down the street, right? So people believe they're going to get that feeling. They buy whatever it is. They own it for a couple of weeks, or they have the ice cream. Then it's a few hours later or a few weeks later, and they don't have the feeling anymore, right? So they need something to give them a feeling again. And that, if you have the feeling, look, this book is dangerous for anybody. Like no one in the marketplace should want anyone to read this book. Because if you read this book, you will probably look at all this stuff in the marketplace and go, what the hell am I looking at any of this for anyway? I don't need this. It's not what I want, right? Because you don't get feelings from the world. They come from inside of you, and you let them out. It's different.
You know? And that's the key, Tom, I think, is realizing, like, if I see myself, if I catch myself looking on Amazon when I don't need anything, or shopping when we're going to a clothes shop and I don't need any clothes, I go, what's the gap? Why do I feel I need to do that? Is it boredom? Is it, I need a dopamine hit? What is it? Like, do I want the Amazon package to arrive so I feel, oh, there's something in the post for me, whatever it is. And I think that's where the real freedom of unwinding want for me comes from, is spotting that pattern and breaking it and realizing what was behind it in the first place. And then you realize, actually, if you're lucky enough, there's very little you actually want.
Yeah, see, that's brilliant. The pattern is the whole deal, because we don't see these patterns. They're invisible, they're hidden, and they're operating us, and we don't know they're operating us. And it feels good because it's a pattern, right? It's comfortable. We're doing it over and over again. Right? And yet when you look at people and you say to them, how do you actually feel? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? And people will say no. And the reason they're saying no is because whatever that hit they got, it's gone. You'd have to catch everyone when they're getting that hit for them to say, yeah, I'm happy. But you can't continually get hits like that. It doesn't work that way.
Tom, that again, part of this show and again, part of my work is, and I can see it in yours, is to get us to wake up from that self-delusion and get us to see with new eyes, to be able to clean the lenses, to be able to see things as they are. One of the things you see time and time again is, and I did this, I don't think I'm above anyone, I've done this, I got stuck in it, which is you're working for a company, you're working your ass off, you're putting your family, your friends, yourself, your health, all second place to doing the job.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of people pleasing in that. There's a little bit of kind of going, oh yeah, Aidan's great, he does a great job, he really works his ass off. And that feels good. And you get addicted to that pattern or that cycle. And then you think you're indispensable. And while this didn't happen to me, I see this happen to other people. Then they get let go by the company and they're like, I just didn't see it coming. And they've neglected networks, they've neglected friends. And when they need them, then all of a sudden they don't have them. And they just are stuck in this, oh my God, the company screwed me. And it's kind of like going, look, the company doesn't owe you anything. You are working. It's a transaction. So don't give up yourself. Don't give up all who you are for the job, because the job really at the end of the day doesn't care.
You can take that example and elevate it to the corporate level and say to yourself, okay, let's say that the organization has taken its eyes off of relationship and has focused inwardly on the things they do, not the relationships with the external world, right? The same thing will happen. People will be sitting around in a boardroom meeting saying, why did our customers leave us? Where did they go? What happened? How come, they're not loyal? Customers aren't loyal anymore. Loyalty is a funny word, right? No one's loyal to a cereal box. They're loyal to a country, right? The people fighting a war. They'll lose their arm and still go back out to fight, to protect their families. That's loyalty. But somehow, organizations get in their mind. How come they're not loyal anymore? That's not how that works. To your point, it's transactional. So if you want the relationship to be maintained, you have to stay deeply involved in the relationship and feel what the feelings are that people are getting from the relationship.
And again, you mentioned a great concept. If people don't know this, is a concept from systems thinking. The purpose of the system is what it does. The POSI, I think it is the acronym. I'd love you to explain that, because that's one thing, a cycle that not only organizations get stuck in, but individuals get stuck in as well.
It's a really simple concept, but it's one of these things that sounds like, no, that doesn't make any sense. Because what a system ends up producing, if you now stop and you look at what are you producing. So let's take our government over here in the States. We're producing a lot of conflict, right? We're producing a lot of conflict. And if I said to people in government, well, that's the purpose of your system, to create conflict, they would say, what the hell are you talking about? That's not the purpose of the system. I'll say, well, you're creating it. So that must be the purpose of it. And it's the same with anything, with anyone, right? If you're languishing and you feel stuck and look at that and realize that's the purpose of your system individually, is to produce what it's producing. If you want something different, you're going to have to change something on the input side to get something different. And that's what people will say. They'll say, no, that's not the purpose of this. That's not what, in essence, it's not what their aspiration is. But that's different. An aspiration is not reality. Aspiration becomes reality when it produces what the purpose of the system was meant to produce. So those two things become real when they're in balance, not when you're deluded and you think, well, I'm losing every boxing match I go into. Well, that's your system, you know? But people don't want to look at that. They don't want to say, what do you mean it's my system? It's your system.
You know, you mentioned mindfulness and meditation, and again, another French philosopher, Blaise Pascal, said all of humanity's problems arise because of our inability to sit quietly in a room. And again, that came to mind reading the book and the importance of both meditation and mindfulness. And they're different things. And again, you describe what both of them are because they're the start of listening to you and those feelings and why they're arising in the first place.
See, when he said that, the inability to sit in a room is because what he's basically saying is that your mind and your body are going to be filled with information coming from that thinking mind. And so what happens when you're sitting quietly? I don't know if you've talked to people, like especially people that are really driven and who are thinkers and planners. And you talk to them and they went away to a silent retreat. A lot of these people will come back and say that they thought they were going to die. You know, they had to get out of there. They couldn't sit there because what the thinking mind was saying to them was, what are you doing? Why are you sitting there? Look, we got something. You remember what we've got going Friday? Next Friday, this is going to happen. If you don't start doing this, and that's the thinking mind maintaining its control over the pattern that has made you who you are today and kept you safe. And the thinking mind doesn't want you to break the pattern and sit quietly because that means you're not listening to it. Right. And it really doesn't like when you're not listening to it. It's like a child, right, playing on the kitchen floor and the mother says, stop that. I'm trying to wash the floor. And the kid just keeps playing. Eventually the mom's voice or the dad's voice gets louder and louder and louder.
There's a couple of things I really wanted to get in before we land the ship, which is how fear and wanting to have all the information possibly available before you leap and make the decision cripples so many people. And again, it's whatever's going on in your mind, whatever you're feeling, whatever thoughts are crippling you. But there was a beautiful quote, man, and I pulled it out. I was like, oh, that's a keeper. You said, it's the unsettling void of uncertainty that's the womb of discovery and the birth of a full, intense, and meaningful life. I absolutely love that, man.
Well, if you look at anyone who is actually talked about, right, over time, these people had a stirring inside of them, and they did it. Whatever that stirring was, they just did it. They didn't think about how's it going to turn out, what's it going to get me, will I be liked, none of that stuff. Now, the bad news is that many of these people it didn't turn out well for, right? There's an implication and a ramification of following this inner passion, this inner voice. But if you have it and it wants out and you don't let it out, I can guarantee you get to the end of your life and you say, what kind of life was that? Or you can be Bob Dylan and you can go to the Newport, festival, folk festival, and say, no, I'm going to play with an amp. I'm going to play rock. I'm going to play with an electric guitar. I don't care what they think. I'm going to do this. And it's wild. I mean, what I recommend people do, read the book, but then go watch some great sports team documentaries, right? Go watch some documentaries of great musicians and bands and watch where this came from that made these people great. It came from inside of them. And it wasn't that they had the best individual players. It wasn't that. They had a chemistry. And they had someone on the team that exuded something that everyone was attracted to. And they went with that. And you know, the funny thing is when that relationship started to break down, everything went with it. The music went with it. The winning went with it. Everything went with it. As long as that relationship was together and that spirit of wonder and discovery and change, then I just watched a documentary on Sly Stone. I mean, watch it and you'll see how it happened and where it broke down. And it's amazing to watch this. It really is.
That is such an important one, where when you do, and I'm not, no, I work on this all the time. I try and meditate. I try and do mindfulness. Like it's an ongoing battle to do it, because you're constantly dealing with the chattering mind. And one of the things that I really realized was your best writing or your best creation comes not from your mind. It comes from a different place. And then I saw this, just a one-liner from Chris Martin, who's the lead singer for Coldplay. And he was talking about a song, and he said, this concept for a song came from wherever the concepts of the songs come from. And it totally resonated with me that it's coming from a different place. Maybe it's the heart, but it's a feel, it bubbles up from within you, or it comes from somewhere else, an ethereal place, and you just channel it through. But that really dawned on me. And then when you were saying that about Sly Stone, I remember seeing the Queen movie that was on a couple of years. Yeah. And do you remember, like, it was the bravery to do something different and do it with full conviction. Everybody who's achieved has done that. They
exactly
have copycatted. They've done something truly remarkably different.
Because they wanted to do it, right? Because when if you remember, when the record producer said no one's going to listen to an 8-minute song or whatever the hell it is, they walked out. They walked out of his office, right? They used some colorful words and then walked out. But basically they said, no, we're going to do what we want to do. We're not doing this in order to get something. We're doing it because there's something in us that wants out. And I don't think what people realize is, even the songwriter from Coldplay, that place that he says it comes from, it's the same place that makes grass grow, that makes an acorn turn into an oak tree. It's the same place. It's flowing through us the same way. You know, we just don't have a way of describing it, so we don't think it exists because we can't put it into words. But it exists. It exists.
Absolutely, man. I'm a huge believer in it. And the other thing we both agree on is the importance of struggle, or what you say beautifully, without suffering, without defeat, without adversity, we are subjected to a grave, unintended consequence. We eventually go blind to our perceptions, to our thoughts, to our hearts, to what we really want. And again, it's only by taking the leap that you actually will fail. And I love the saying that you either win or you learn, because if the worst thing is to be left with wondering, should I, would I, could I, because you'll bring that, like you say, Bronnie Ware, the palliative nurse, you'll bring that to the grave with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it's funny. When we're children, we're explorers and we're experimenters. It's how we learn, right? I mean, we're tasting dirt. We're climbing trees, right? We're spinning in circles. We're singing gibberish. And what do we hear from everyone around us, right? Relentlessly. Don't do that. That's not right. You're going to get into trouble. You're no good. That's dangerous. You're not good enough. And so that's the thinking mind. That is the training data that our AI thinking mind has in order for what? In order to keep us safe and comfortable. It just does this automatically because it knows when we listened to the adults, we stayed safe and we stayed comfortable because we knew we needed them when we were little in order to stay safe and comfortable. We're not little anymore. We don't have to listen to that telling us, you're not this, you're not. No, that's not true, right? We have the same life force moving through us that every other human being on the planet has. That's the source right there, the source material. You know, if you want to call it the operating system, we have the same operating system, but we're not allowing it to operate because we have that thinking mind, that AI running the system. And we need to take that thing off of line, use it when we need it, but we don't need it really that much at all. Like you said, you feel sick, don't go on YouTube and what's wrong with me? That's the thinking mind saying, I'm going to solve everything. No, you're not going to solve everything. A lot of this is going to come from eating dirt and climbing and falling out of trees. And that's where you're going to learn the reality of what life is. That's where it's going to happen.
That's the feedback.
That is,
where you were saying there about the AI mind, and you say it's like you're like in an autonomous vehicle. The AI is running the vehicle. You kind of go, I don't even know how I got from here to here, but I'm here. And I thought that was such an important message as well to get across. Couple of last things for you. Reality. So there's a chapter on reality as well. And you say, or a verse, let's say it's a verse on reality. You say reality is a relationship, period. Relationship with yourself, relationship with others, relationship with the natural world, relationship with the very idea of a beautiful goose trapped in a bottle. Everything else is delusion. I'll let you unpack what that's about.
Well, I'm sure everybody that's watching this is going to say, what is the goose in the bottle statement all about, right? Well, that was an actual Zen koan that basically it's a puzzle that cannot be solved is what a koan is. And the purpose of it is to break the thinking mind so that it just stops trying to figure out things. So give it something that just is not solvable. And so as the story goes, the master there gives this student the koan about, someone has raised a goose in a bottle, and the goose has grown so big inside the bottle that it can't get out through the neck of the bottle. And how do you get the goose out of the bottle without harming the goose or breaking the bottle? And so these two people are sitting trying to figure this out. And what I said was, you see, if there was a little kid sitting by listening to this, he would have said, break the damn bottle, break the bottle. In other words, when it comes to relationship, there's no puzzle. There shouldn't be a puzzle, right? And a goose is relationship. A beautiful living creature is relationship. Break the bottle. And I guess the most important part of this is that when it comes down to it all, and no one can see this because I don't think they've been behind the curtain of their illusions of the world. All there is relationship. So when you see these movie stars on television, on the red carpet and all that, or in their movies, and then you see the reality, what you'll see is they have a few close friends and maybe a wife. And that's it. Just like you. None of these people are different than you. They don't go home and have 1,000 people come to the front door and open it and throw the arms around them and say, come on inside. That's not it. That is not reality. So if that's reality, and all there is relationship, you to yourself, right? You have to be true to yourself in order to attract people that like that, right? So that you're not performing to be with someone. You with other people as you, right? You with, and we could talk you with your health and all that, your physical relationship, and then you with the external world. And I'm going to give you something radical that I proposed to a couple of companies, big companies, but I don't think they can see through it, the reality of it. I believe that an organization that made its strategy relationship, that's their strategy, their only strategy. And everything everybody did was basically aligned with relationship and whether or not it's happening. Ourselves with our people with themselves, us with our customers, us with whatever other agencies and organizations, us with the world. And you just focus relentlessly on improving relationship, it's impossible not to grow. Impossible. Because you will see if you need to make a technological leap. You will see because the people will tell you, right? They will say, hey, we're not really enjoying this experience. Can you bring us this level that we're seeing someplace else? Right? This is what will happen. But it's tough for people to see through that, because what happens is they get in a pattern, right? It's the pattern. I'm sure you've heard it, right? It's, okay, that sounds good, but look, we're too busy to think about how to implement something like that or how to think through something like that. We're very busy. We cannot pause. And what they're saying is they can't pause the pattern, right? Because it'll create all kinds of discomfort and challenges, and that's not true. You don't have to pause anything. All you've got to do is change what the purpose of the system is. And if the purpose of the system is to improve relationships, then you measure everything around that, and it'll change everything else within the system.
Beautiful, beautiful, man. I'm going to ask you for that's your message to an organization or to a leader of an organization. I'm going to ask you to think about your message to the individual as well, to the change maker in an organization, to somebody in their own career as well. I pulled a final message from the book that I wanted to finish on and sign off with, but I'm going to leave you with the final words. I'm going to just give you this beautiful few questions for our audience to think about. Do get the book. It's a tiny little koan. It's a small read. It's on Kindle. It's on audiobook as well. Very short 2-hour audiobook. Tom asks at the end, are you sleepwalking through life, being pushed and pulled by the past and the future, and by other people's idea of good and bad and right and wrong? Are you allowing your thinking mind to sap your energy and tell you what you feel, think, and do? Or are you awake, aware, and fully engaged, allowing your curiosity and innate intelligence to move you through your world? Life is an ongoing relationship with the flowering of reality, a dynamic dance to enjoy, appreciate, and nourish. It's not going anywhere because it's already here. The mystery of life transcends mere language. It's a symphony of experiences waiting to be felt, a dance aching to be embodied. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Look, being in flow with your feelings now and not trying to get feelings someday in the future, because that's what leads to regret, is not being in flow with feelings now. Emily Dickinson wrote that the sense of living is joy enough. But most people don't have that sense because they're blocking it with the delusions of want, right? Of this and that, and now and then, and right and wrong. So really, what we all need to do is, number one, stop lying to ourselves. We do want what we're doing. Because why? In most cases, it helps keep us safe and comfortable in our own minds. Feelings are what we're about and what we want to allow. Feelings true to ourselves on the inside, not what we want to get eventually from the outside. And relationship, as I mentioned, is all there is. I mean, everything we do is an opportunity to express our true feelings and enhance relationship. Everything else is a self-protective and, in many cases, harmful delusion. Once you get that square, that you're a feeling being, and you have a tool, an incredible thinking mind, that you can use, you can take out of your pocket and use when you want to. Instead of walking around like with a knife, sticking it everywhere, because that's what we're doing. We get this tool in our hand all the time when we don't need it. And it's basically, like you said, it's like the car that drives itself. It's taking us to a place where we're going to end up and say, how did we get there? And especially now, we need to understand that, because I don't think anybody understands what AI is going to do and how it's going to manifest in the world in our lives. If you don't have a philosophy of life that includes what this thing is, it could be a very dangerous thing.
author of Unwinding Want, Using Your Mind to Escape Your Thoughts. Tom Asacker, you'll be back again, I hope.
Thank you, Aidan. I'd love to.